Dreams aren't just random neurons firing, they're letters from your soul, and most people are throwing them away unopened. You've been told dreams are either meaningless brain static or prophetic visions, psychological waste disposal or divine communication, fantasy or reality. But here's the truth. None of those labels capture what dreams actually are. Dreams don't conform to your beliefs about them. They reveal what's hidden beneath your waking consciousness, and that's what makes them dangerous. Because in ancient traditions, dreams weren't entertainment for the sleeping mind. They were portals, gateways to realms where the ego couldn't follow, where the ancestors spoke, where the future cast shadows backward into the present. Shamans, oracles, mystics, they didn't dismiss their dreams as nonsense. They treated them as sacred texts written in the language of symbol and metaphor. But today, dreams are forgotten the moment your alarm sounds. What was once revelation has become irrelevant, the sacred turned into sleep. This documentary isn't about dreams being real or unreal. It's about what they do to your understanding of reality itself. Long before Freud turned dreams into sexual metaphors, or Jung mapped them as psychological landscapes, dreams were considered direct communication from the divine. At the dawn of recorded history, dreams were never seen as products of the brain. They were visitations, messages, initiation rites conducted in realms beyond the physical. In ancient Mesopotamia, dreams were so sacred that entire temples were built for dream incubation, ritualized sleep designed to invite divine visions. The Epic of Gilgamesh doesn't begin with action. It begins with dreams, prophetic, terrifying, transformational dreams that set the entire hero's journey in motion. These weren't seen as psychological projections, but as communications from the gods themselves. In ancient Egypt, dreams were portals to the Duat, the underworld realm where souls traveled after death. The living could access this realm through conscious dreaming, receiving guidance from those who had crossed over. Hieroglyphs show dreamers lying on temple floors, receiving visions that would determine the fate of kingdoms. Dreams weren't personal entertainment. They were state intelligence from the realm of the dead. The oracle at Delphi didn't just prophesy in waking trances. She received many of her most profound visions through dreams, sleeping in the temple's sacred chamber where psychoactive vapors rose from cracks in the earth. Her dreams became policy. Her nighttime visions shaped the political landscape of the ancient world. In ancient India, the Vedas speak of dreams as one of the four states of consciousness, alongside waking, deep sleep, and the witness state that observes them all. Dreams weren't illusions to be dismissed, but data from subtle realms, messages from the collective unconscious, glimpses into the karmic web that connects all beings. Chinese Taoist masters practiced dream yoga, the art of maintaining consciousness while dreaming. They understood that in dreams, the usual laws of physics dissolve, time becomes fluid, and the dreamer can explore possibilities that don't exist in waking reality. Dreams were laboratories for the soul. Among indigenous peoples across North America, vision quests often culminated in powerful dreams. These weren't random nighttime experiences, but carefully cultivated communications with spirit guides, power animals, and ancestral wisdom. Dreams were how the tribe received guidance about hunting, healing, and navigating the unseen forces that shaped their world. But somewhere along the way, we stopped listening. We turned dreams into brain maintenance, neural housekeeping, meaningless static that the mind produces while processing the day's events. We medicalized mystery and wondered why life felt so much smaller. What modern psychology calls the unconscious, ancient traditions called the realm of spirits. What we label as symbols, they experienced as living entities. What we dismiss as fantasy, they engage with as reality. The difference isn't in the dreams themselves, it's in how we choose to receive them. Carl Jung spent decades mapping what he called the collective unconscious, a shared psychic space where all humanity's dreams, myths, and archetypes reside. He discovered that certain symbols appear across all cultures, in all eras, regardless of contact between civilizations. The Great Mother, the Shadow, the Wise Old Man, the Hero's Journey. These aren't learned concepts. They're built into the architecture of the human psyche. But Jung went further. He suggested that dreams weren't just personal processing, but communications from this collective realm. The symbols that appear in your dreams aren't random. They're archetypal forces trying to restore balance to your psyche. The monster chasing you isn't just fear, it's the shadow aspect of your personality demanding integration. The wise woman offering guidance isn't wish fulfillment, it's the anima, the feminine wisdom within your own soul trying to speak. In Jungian analysis, dreams become diagnostic tools for the soul's health. Recurring nightmares indicate unresolved trauma. Dreams of flying suggest the need for spiritual transcendence. Dreams of death often herald psychological rebirth. The unconscious mind becomes a master physician, using the language of dreams to show you exactly what needs healing. But here's where it gets interesting and dangerous. If dreams are communications from the unconscious, then ignoring them isn't just missing out on insight. It's refusing to listen to your own soul. It's like having a wise teacher speak to you every night and walking away without taking notes. Indigenous dream traditions understood this. Among the Seneca people, dreams weren't just experiences. They were obligations. If you dreamed something, you had to act on it, not literally, but symbolically. The dream demanded integration. It required you to change something in your waking life to honor what the unconscious had revealed. This wasn't superstition. It was psychological sophistication. They understood that dreams are the psyche's way of maintaining equilibrium. When waking consciousness becomes too rigid, too one-sided, dreams compensate by showing you what you've ignored, repressed, or forgotten. Modern neuroscience is beginning to catch up. REM sleep, when most vivid dreams occur, isn't just brain maintenance. It's when the mind processes emotions, consolidates memories, and makes connections between seemingly unrelated information. Dreams aren't meaningless. They're meaning-making machines, weaving the fragments of experience into coherent narratives. But the ancients knew something neuroscience is only beginning to glimpse. Dreams don't just process the past. They access information that hasn't yet entered waking consciousness. They preview possibilities, warn of dangers, reveal solutions to problems that the conscious mind can't solve. This is where dreams become dangerous territory for the materialist worldview. Because if dreams can access information beyond the brain's current database, then consciousness isn't produced by the brain, it's accessed through it. And that changes everything. There's a reason every major religion has stories of prophetic dreams. From Jacob's ladder to Muhammad's night journey, from the Buddha's dreams before enlightenment to the Virgin Mary's annunciation through a dream. These aren't metaphorical stories. They're accounts of consciousness accessing information beyond ordinary perception. But you don't have to be a prophet to receive prophetic dreams. Throughout history, ordinary people have reported dreams that later came true, dreams that warned of danger, dreams that provided solutions to impossible problems. Science calls this coincidence. Traditional cultures called it a natural function of human consciousness. In ancient Greece, the practice of incubation dreams was so common that entire healing centers were built around it. People would sleep in sacred spaces, asking specific questions of the gods, and receive answers in dreams. The cure for their illness, the resolution to their conflict, the guidance for their life's direction, all received through carefully cultivated dream experiences. The key was preparation. Dreamers would fast, purify themselves, make offerings, and set clear intentions before sleep. They understood that prophetic dreams don't come to unprepared minds. The consciousness has to be refined, clarified, made receptive to subtle information. This practice never disappeared. It just went underground. Even today, scientists report breakthrough discoveries coming through dreams. Kekulé's benzene ring structure, Tesla's alternating current design, Mendeleev's periodic table, all received through dream visions. The unconscious mind, it seems, has access to patterns and connections that linear thinking can't reach. But prophetic dreams don't just reveal external information. They reveal the hidden patterns of your own life, the relationship that's going to end, the opportunity that's approaching, the health issue that needs attention before it becomes crisis. Dreams show you the trajectory you're on and offer course corrections. The danger comes in how you interpret them. Dreams speak in symbols, not literal facts. The dream of your own death might be announcing psychological transformation, not physical demise. The vision of flying might be pointing towards spiritual liberation, not literal flight. Dreams require translation, and that translation requires wisdom. Ancient dream interpreters weren't fortune tellers. They were psychologists, priests, and philosophers rolled into one. They understood that dreams reveal not fixed futures, but current trajectories. They show you where your unconscious patterns are leading and offer opportunities to change course. Modern dream interpretation often reduces this complexity to simple symbol dictionaries. Snake equals sexuality. Water equals emotion. House equals the self. But dreams are far more sophisticated than that. The same symbol can mean completely different things depending on the dreamer's life situation, emotional state, and spiritual development. This is why traditional cultures emphasized relationship with experienced dream workers, elders who had spent decades learning the symbolic language of the unconscious. They knew that dreams are highly personal communications that require both universal wisdom and individual insight to decode properly. Without that guidance, prophetic dreams become either ignored entirely or misinterpreted in ways that create more confusion than clarity. The modern world offers dream dictionaries and YouTube interpretations, but no real training in the deep art of dream translation. We've lost the skill of listening to the soul's language. Not all dreams come to comfort or guide. Some come to disturb, to challenge, to force you to face what you've been avoiding. These are shadow dreams, nightmares that reveal the parts of yourself you've rejected, buried, or never acknowledged. In Jungian psychology, the shadow represents everything you've decided you're not. The anger you've suppressed, the sexuality you've denied, the violence you've rejected, the selfishness you've hidden. All of it lives in the shadow, and all of it appears in dreams, not to terrorize you, but to integrate you. The monster chasing you through dark hallways isn't an external threat. It's an aspect of your own psyche demanding attention. The shadow appears monstrous not because it's evil, but because you've made it foreign. You've spent so much energy rejecting these parts of yourself that when they finally surface in dreams, they seem alien, frightening, other. But here's what traditional cultures understood that modern psychology often misses. The shadow isn't just personal, it's ancestral. The traumas your grandparents never processed, the violence your lineage witnessed, the unresolved pain of your family system, all of it lives in your unconscious and emerges in dreams. Indigenous cultures speak of generational healing that happens through dreams. The ancestor who died in war appears to show you where the family line needs healing. The grandmother who never spoke of her trauma reveals it in dream form, so it can finally be processed and released. Dreams become time machines that allow healing to move backward through generations. This is why shadow dreams often feel bigger than personal psychology. They carry the weight of collective trauma, ancestral memory, and species-wide patterns of suffering. The dream of genocide isn't necessarily about your personal violence. It might be the collective shadow of humanity appearing in your individual unconscious. Carl Jung experienced this directly during World War I. His dreams were filled with apocalyptic visions of Europe drowning in blood, dreams that preceded the actual war by months. He realized he wasn't just processing personal material, but tapping into the collective shadow of Western civilization. His individual unconscious had become a receiver for collective trauma. This is where dreams become dangerous territory for those unprepared to handle what they reveal. Shadow dreams don't just show you what you've rejected about yourself, they show you what your culture, your family, your species has rejected. And that can be overwhelming without proper context and support. Modern people often wake from shadow dreams feeling disturbed, guilty, or confused. They dream of violence and think they're violent. They dream of sexuality and feel ashamed. They dream of death and fear they're suicidal. But shadow dreams aren't predictions or confessions. They're invitations to wholeness. The shadow appears in dreams not to destroy you, but to complete you. It shows you the energies you've disowned so you can reclaim them consciously. The aggression you've suppressed might be the assertiveness you need to set boundaries. The sexuality you've denied might be the creative life force you need to manifest your purpose. The darkness you've rejected might contain the power you need to transform. But integration requires courage. It means owning parts of yourself that don't fit your self-image. It means accepting that you're capable of both light and shadow, creation and destruction, love and hate. It means becoming fully human instead of maintaining the illusion of being purely good. Traditional initiation rites often included shadow work through dreams. Young people would be guided through vision quests, dream ceremonies, and ritual ordeals that forced them to face their own darkness. They emerged not as perfect beings, but as integrated ones, capable of holding their full humanity without being overwhelmed by it. We've lost that guidance. Modern dreams of shadow material often remain unprocessed, creating internal splitting, where people see themselves as purely light while projecting their darkness onto others. This creates the psychology of demonization, where other people become repositories for the shadow material we refuse to own. But the shadow will not be denied. What you don't integrate in dreams, you'll encounter in relationships, in conflicts, in the patterns that keep repeating in your life. The dreams are offering you the chance to meet your darkness safely, in the protected space of sleep. If you refuse the invitation, the shadow will find other ways to get your attention. There's a type of dream that modern culture both obsesses over and completely misunderstands: the erotic dream. Reduced to either meaningless hormonal discharge or repressed sexual desires, these dreams are actually among the most sacred experiences the unconscious can offer. They're not about sex as physical act. They're about union as spiritual principle. In ancient traditions, erotic dreams weren't shameful secrets, but divine visitations. The Greek god Eros wasn't just sexual desire. He was the cosmic force that brings all opposites together, the fundamental creative energy of the universe. To dream erotically was to participate in the sacred marriage between consciousness and the unconscious, between spirit and matter, between the human and divine. The tantric traditions of India and Tibet understood this completely. Sexual energy wasn't seen as base or purely physical. It was recognized as the most concentrated form of spiritual energy accessible to humans. Erotic dreams were considered communications from Kundalini, the serpent power that lies dormant at the base of the spine, waiting to rise and unite with cosmic consciousness. In these traditions, the beloved who appears in erotic dreams isn't necessarily a person you desire sexually. They're often representations of your own soul, your anima or animus, the divine feminine or masculine principle within your own psyche. The erotic encounter is actually a symbolic representation of internal integration, the marriage of your conscious and unconscious minds. This is why erotic dreams often feature people you would never consciously choose as sexual partners. Your stern teacher, your difficult relative, even strangers whose faces you barely remember. They appear in erotic dreams not because of hidden physical attraction, but because they represent aspects of your psyche that need to be integrated through the sacred marriage of opposites. Carl Jung wrote extensively about this phenomenon. He discovered that erotic dreams often occur at crucial points in psychological development, when the conscious mind needs to integrate previously rejected aspects of the self. The erotic energy in the dream represents the libido, not sexual libido, but psychic life force, moving toward wholeness. But modern culture has completely lost this understanding. We've reduced erotic dreams to either wish fulfillment or biological function. We miss the profound spiritual communication happening beneath the surface. We feel guilty about dreams we should be honoring, confused by symbols we should be celebrating. In sacred sexuality traditions, the orgasmic experience in dreams was seen as a preview of cosmic consciousness, the moment when individual identity dissolves into universal awareness. The French call orgasm la petite mort, the little death, because it offers a glimpse of ego dissolution that mystics spend lifetimes trying to achieve through meditation. Erotic dreams were considered so sacred in some traditions that they were shared with spiritual teachers and analyzed for their symbolic content. The identity of the dream lover, the location of the encounter, the emotions experienced, all were decoded as messages from the divine about the dreamer's spiritual development. The Sufi poet Rumi wrote extensively about erotic dreams as communications from the beloved, not a human lover, but the divine itself, appearing in the language the soul understands best. His poetry is filled with erotic imagery that's simultaneously about human love and cosmic union. The erotic dream becomes a form of prayer, a way the soul communes with its source. But there's a shadow side to erotic dreams that traditional cultures also understood. They can become addictive, a way of avoiding real intimacy by preferring the fantasy of union to the challenge of actual relationship. They can create unrealistic expectations about human partners, or become substitutes for the real spiritual work of integration. The key is discernment, the ability to receive the sacred communication without getting lost in the sensual content. This requires spiritual maturity and often guidance from someone experienced in the symbolic language of the unconscious. Indigenous cultures often had specific rituals for processing powerful erotic dreams. The dreamer would share the experience with elders who could help interpret its spiritual significance. The dream might be seen as a calling to certain forms of healing work, or as preparation for significant life transitions, or as guidance about partnership and family. Without this context, erotic dreams remain trapped at the literal level. They're either dismissed as meaningless or create confusion and guilt. The sacred communication gets lost in the sensual packaging. The soul's attempt to communicate through the language of union gets reduced to the psychology of repression. But when received properly, erotic dreams become some of the most profound spiritual experiences available to human consciousness. They offer a glimpse of the cosmic orgasm, the moment when all separation dissolves and individual awareness merges with universal love. Dreams don't just reveal problems, they actively participate in healing them. This isn't metaphorical. There's something about the dream state that allows for psychological and even physical restoration that can't happen in waking consciousness alone. Ancient healing temples understood this completely. In Greece, the temples of Asclepius were designed specifically for healing dreams. Patients would undergo purification rituals, make offerings, and sleep in sacred chambers where the god of healing would appear in dreams to provide cures. These weren't primitive medical practices. They were sophisticated healing methodologies that recognized dreams as active agents of restoration. The process wasn't passive. Dreamers would set clear intentions for healing, ask specific questions, and prepare their consciousness to receive guidance. The healing dreams that followed weren't just symbolic. They often contained detailed instructions for treatment, specific herbal remedies, or insights into the psychological roots of physical illness. Modern research is beginning to validate what ancient cultures always knew. REM sleep, when most vivid dreams occur, is when the brain processes traumatic memories, integrates emotional experiences, and actually rewrites neural pathways. Dreams aren't just reflecting psychological states, they're actively transforming them. Dr. Matthew Walker's research at UC Berkeley has shown that REM sleep is crucial for emotional regulation. Dreams allow us to process difficult emotions in a safe space where the usual stress hormones are suppressed. The brain can revisit traumatic memories, work through conflicts, and find resolutions without the fight or flight response that would be triggered in waking life. But traditional healing dreams go beyond emotional processing. They often contain specific guidance about physical healing, changes in diet, movement practices, herbal remedies, or lifestyle modifications that the dreamer couldn't have known consciously. The unconscious mind seems to have access to information about the body's needs that ordinary awareness can't reach. In many indigenous traditions, healing dreams are considered so powerful that they're shared with the entire community. A healer receives a dream about treating a specific illness, and that knowledge becomes part of the tribe's medical wisdom. Dreams become a form of divine revelation about healing practices. The Lakota tradition speaks of healing dreams that come not just to medicine people, but to anyone whose soul is ready to receive them. These dreams often feature animal spirits who teach specific healing techniques, plant medicines that can treat certain conditions, or ceremonies that can restore balance to sick individuals or communities. But healing dreams don't always feel healing. Often they're disturbing, challenging, or even nightmarish. This is because true healing requires facing what you've been avoiding. The dream that terrifies you might be showing you the exact fear that's creating your illness. The nightmare that wakes you in a cold sweat might be releasing trauma that's been trapped in your body for years. Carl Jung observed this pattern repeatedly in his practice. Patients would report disturbing dreams just before major psychological breakthroughs. The unconscious would present the problem in its most raw, unfiltered form, forcing the dreamer to confront what they'd been denying. The healing came not from avoiding the disturbing content, but from integrating it. This is why traditional cultures emphasize the importance of working with skilled dream interpreters. Healing dreams often require translation and integration support. Without guidance, the healing potential remains locked within the symbolic content. Modern trauma therapy is rediscovering these principles. Techniques like image rehearsal therapy teach people to consciously engage with recurring nightmares, changing the dream narrative to create resolution. EMDR therapy often triggers spontaneous healing dreams as traumatic memories are processed and integrated. But the most profound healing dreams often come spontaneously, without therapeutic intervention. They arise when the psyche is ready to release old patterns, when the soul has accumulated enough wisdom to handle transformation, when the individual is prepared to let go of familiar suffering in exchange for unknown wholeness. These dreams can be so powerful that they change the dreamer's entire life trajectory. A single healing dream can resolve decades of trauma, shift lifelong patterns, or provide the missing piece needed for recovery from physical illness. They're not just psychological experiences, they're encounters with the healing intelligence that governs all life. In traditional cultures around the world, there's a universal understanding: the dead don't disappear, they relocate. And one of the primary ways they communicate with the living is through dreams. This isn't superstition, it's sophisticated psychology dressed in spiritual language. When someone significant dies, they don't just vanish from your psyche. They become internalized, absorbed into your unconscious mind, where they continue to exist as living psychological realities. What cultures call ancestral visitation, psychology might describe as the ongoing influence of internalized objects. But the experience is the same. The dead continue to communicate through dreams. In African traditions, particularly in West African spirituality, ancestor dreams are considered the most important communications the living can receive. Ancestors appear in dreams to offer guidance, warnings, blessings, and teachings that aren't available through any other source. They're not just memories, they're active spiritual forces continuing to influence the family system. The Akan people of Ghana believe that deceased family members become part of the collective ancestral wisdom that guides the tribe. They communicate primarily through dreams, appearing to descendants with specific messages about health, relationships, business decisions, and spiritual development. These dreams are taken so seriously that major family decisions often depend on ancestral dream guidance. Similarly, in Chinese culture, dreams of deceased relatives are considered direct communications from the spirit world. The ancestor might appear to warn of coming difficulties, offer solutions to current problems, or provide blessings for important undertakings. These dreams often occur at crucial moments, before major decisions, during illness, or when the family faces significant challenges. But ancestral dreams aren't always gentle. Sometimes the dead appear in dreams to demand attention for unfinished business. They might show themselves in distress, angry, or trapped, indicating that something in the family system needs healing. These dreams continue until the living take action to resolve whatever the ancestor is trying to communicate. Carl Jung experienced this directly. After his father died, Jung had a series of powerful dreams in which his father appeared confused and lost, as if he didn't understand that he had died. Jung interpreted these dreams as indicating that his father's spirit needed guidance for the transition into death. Through active imagination and dream work, Jung was able to help his father's spirit find peace. This points to one of the most profound aspects of ancestral dreams. They suggest that death is not the end of relationship, but a transformation of it. The living and the dead continue to influence each other through the dream realm. The ancestors need the living to remember them, honor them, and complete any unfinished psychological business. The living need the ancestors for wisdom, guidance, and connection to the larger story of the family. In Mexican culture, the Day of the Dead isn't just a remembrance celebration. It's based on the belief that the deceased return through dreams to visit their living relatives. Families prepare altars with photographs, favorite foods, and personal objects of the deceased, creating optimal conditions for dream visitations. The dreams that occur during this time are considered sacred communications from the other side. But ancestral dreams don't just involve blood relatives. They can include anyone who played a significant role in shaping your psyche, teachers, mentors, friends, even cultural figures who never knew you personally. Carl Jung reported dreams of historical figures who appeared to share insights about his work. These weren't just projections, but encounters with what he called the objective psyche, the collective wisdom of humanity that transcends individual death. The therapeutic implications are profound. Many people carry unresolved grief, guilt, or anger toward deceased loved ones. Traditional therapy tries to work through these feelings cognitively, but ancestral dreams often provide direct resolution, opportunities for conversation, forgiveness, or completion that feels entirely real to the dreamer. One of the most common ancestral dream experiences involves receiving permission from the deceased to move forward in life. The widow dreams of her husband telling her it's okay to love again. The adult child dreams of a deceased parent expressing pride in their achievements. These dreams provide closure and permission that the conscious mind couldn't generate on its own. But there's a shadow side to ancestral dreams. Sometimes the dead appear to pull the living toward death, not maliciously, but because the bond between them is so strong that it creates an unconscious death wish. These dreams require careful interpretation and often professional support to process safely. The key to working with ancestral dreams is understanding that they represent ongoing relationships, not just memories. The dead continue to exist as active forces in the unconscious, and dreams are the primary medium through which these relationships continue to evolve. Modern culture's denial of death creates a psychological problem. We have no framework for maintaining relationship with the deceased. We're expected to get over death, to move on, as if significant relationships can simply be severed by physical death. But the unconscious knows better. It continues the relationship through dreams, whether we understand this process or not. There's something about childhood consciousness that makes it particularly receptive to prophetic dreams. Children regularly report dreams that later come true, visions of events that haven't yet occurred, and encounters with information that they couldn't have accessed through ordinary means. Scientists dismiss this as coincidence or confabulation. Traditional cultures call it natural ability, that adults have trained themselves to ignore. Children's brains are different from adult brains in ways that might explain their enhanced dream receptivity. Their neural pathways are still forming. Their rational mind hasn't yet learned to filter out impossible information. And their connection to unconscious knowledge remains relatively unobstructed by social conditioning. But there's something more profound happening in children's prophetic dreams. They seem to have access to what Jung called the collective unconscious, the shared psychic space where future possibilities exist in potential form. Adults learn to block this access in favor of linear thinking and practical concerns. Children still have the key. In many indigenous cultures, children's dreams are considered especially sacred because they are believed to come from spirits who haven't yet forgotten their divine origins. The Lakota tradition teaches that children are closer to the spirit world because they've only recently arrived from it. Their dreams often contain wisdom and guidance that benefits the entire tribe. The Aboriginal people of Australia believe that children can dream their way into the dream time, the eternal realm where all past, present, and future events exist simultaneously. Through their dreams, children can access information about their life purpose, their spiritual gifts, and their role in the community's future. But modern culture typically dismisses children's prophetic dreams as imagination or wishful thinking. When a child reports a dream that later comes true, adults explain it away as coincidence. When children dream of deceased relatives they never met, adults assume they've seen photographs. When children describe places they've never been or events they couldn't have witnessed, adults question their memory or honesty. This dismissal isn't just missing important information. It's actively training children to disconnect from their natural psychic abilities. By the time they reach adulthood, most people have learned to ignore or forget their dreams entirely. The gift gets buried under layers of rational skepticism. Dr. Patricia Garfield, a leading dream researcher, has documented thousands of cases of children's prophetic dreams. She's found that children often dream of natural disasters before they occur, family events before they're announced, and encounters with people they will later meet in waking life. The accuracy rate is far higher than statistical probability would suggest. More intriguingly, children's prophetic dreams often seem designed to prepare them for future challenges. A child dreams of their parents' divorce months before it happens, giving their unconscious mind time to process the coming change. Another child dreams of a grandparent's death, which helps them cope with the actual loss when it occurs. This suggests that prophetic dreams serve an adaptive function. They allow consciousness to preview and prepare for future experiences. Children's more fluid relationship with time and causality makes them natural recipients of this preparatory information. But children's prophetic dreams don't just concern personal events. Some children report dreams about world events, natural disasters, or collective experiences that affect entire communities. These children often feel burdened by their visions, not understanding why they're receiving information about tragedies they can't prevent. Traditional cultures had systems for supporting children with prophetic gifts. In many Native American tribes, children who showed unusual dream abilities were identified early and given special training. They learned to interpret their visions responsibly, to distinguish between personal and collective information, and to use their gifts in service of community healing. The Tibetan Buddhist tradition identifies children who dream of their past lives, using these dreams as one of the criteria for recognizing reincarnated lamas. The accuracy of children's memories of places, people, and events from their dream-remembered past lives has been documented in numerous cases, suggesting that consciousness can access information that transcends individual lifetime. But perhaps the most profound aspect of children's prophetic dreams is what they suggest about the nature of time itself. If children can accurately dream future events, then linear time might be more of a perceptual construct than an absolute reality. The future might exist in potential form, accessible to consciousness states that haven't yet learned the rules of temporal limitation. This has enormous implications for how we understand human potential. If prophetic dreaming is a natural capacity that gets trained out of children, then recovery of this ability might be possible through practices that restore childlike consciousness, meditation, play, artistic expression, and dream work itself. Modern education focuses almost exclusively on developing rational, analytical thinking, but traditional education systems recognize the importance of cultivating intuitive abilities, including dream work. Children were taught to remember their dreams, share them with elders, and learn the symbolic language through which the unconscious communicates. The loss of this training represents not just individual impoverishment, but collective loss. If children naturally have access to prophetic information, then dismissing their dreams means missing potential warnings, guidance, and insights that could benefit entire communities. Every time you fall asleep and begin to dream, you're embarking on what traditional cultures would recognize as a shamanic journey. You're leaving ordinary reality, traveling through non-physical realms, encountering spiritual beings, receiving visions, and returning with information from the other side. The only difference between shamanic journeying and regular dreaming is consciousness and intention. Shamans across cultures have always understood that the dream realm is identical to what they call the spirit world. Both are accessed through altered states of consciousness. Both involve encounters with non-physical beings. Both provide information that isn't available through ordinary perception. Both require interpretation and integration to be fully useful. In traditional shamanism, the shaman enters trance states through drumming, dancing, plant medicines, or other techniques that alter brainwave patterns. Research has shown that these practices induce the same brain states that occur naturally during REM sleep. The shaman is essentially learning to dream while awake, while ordinary dreamers are shamanic, journeying without realizing it. The Siberian shamans, from whom the word shaman originates, considered dream work to be the most fundamental shamanic skill. Before learning to journey while awake, apprentice shamans spent years developing their ability to remain conscious while dreaming, to remember their dream experiences clearly, and to interpret the symbolic messages they received. In their understanding, dreams weren't produced by the individual mind, but were actual travels into the spirit world. The dreamer's soul would leave the sleeping body and journey through various realms, meeting spirit guides, receiving teachings, and sometimes rescuing lost soul parts or healing spiritual imbalances. This worldview transforms the meaning of common dream experiences. Flying dreams aren't wish fulfillment, they're memories of soul travel. Dreams of deceased people aren't psychological projections. They're actual encounters with spirits of the dead. Nightmares aren't just fear processing, they're often battles with negative spiritual entities or journeys into shadow realms that need healing. The Australian Aboriginal concept of the dream time illustrates this understanding perfectly. The dream time isn't just mythology, it's the eternal realm where all existence originates and continues. Every night, through dreams, individuals can access the dream time and receive guidance from ancestor spirits, animal totems, and the creative forces that shape reality. Aboriginal people don't distinguish between dreams and spiritual visions. Both are considered travels into the dream time. Both provide real information, and both require skilled interpretation by elders who understand the symbolic language of the spirit realm. Amazonian shamans work extensively with dream states induced by plant medicines like ayahuasca, but they recognize that the same realms accessed through plant journeys are available every night through natural dreaming. The plants simply make the journey more vivid and memorable. Experienced shamans can enter these realms at will, with or without plant assistance. In their cosmology, dreams are opportunities for healing work, divination, communication with nature spirits, and exploration of alternate realities. The shaman might dream their way to the spirit of a medicinal plant to learn its healing properties, or journey to the realm of the dead to retrieve information for grieving relatives. But shamanic dreaming isn't passive. It requires training, intention, and often years of practice to master. Traditional shamanic cultures had detailed techniques for controlling dream experiences, methods for maintaining consciousness while dreaming, techniques for directing the dream narrative, and practices for ensuring safe return from potentially dangerous spiritual realms. Tibetan Buddhism preserves some of the most sophisticated dream yoga practices. Advanced practitioners learn to recognize the dream state while still dreaming, maintain continuous awareness through all phases of sleep, and use the dream realm for spiritual practice. In the highest levels of dream yoga, practitioners report being able to teach and learn from other dreamers, visit distant locations, and receive initiations from spiritual masters in the dream state. These abilities aren't considered supernatural, they're seen as natural functions of consciousness that become available when the mind is properly trained. The same capacity that allows ordinary people to have vivid dreams can be developed into conscious dream control, spiritual travel, and communication with non-physical beings. Modern sleep research is inadvertently validating shamanic understanding of dreams. Studies of lucid dreaming, the ability to become conscious while dreaming, show that trained individuals can indeed control their dream experiences, communicate with other lucid dreamers, and even perform problem-solving tasks within the dream state that carry over into waking life. But there's something that modern research misses and traditional shamanism always understood. Dreams aren't just personal experiences. They're encounters with a shared reality that exists beyond individual consciousness. The shaman doesn't just explore their own psyche through dreams. They travel through realms that other shamans can also access and verify. This is why shamanic cultures developed detailed maps of the dream realm. They described specific regions of the spirit world, identified the types of beings that inhabit each area, and created protocols for safe travel through potentially dangerous territories. These weren't individual fantasies. They were collectively validated descriptions of non-physical realities. The implications are staggering. If shamanic dreaming traditions are accurate, then every night you're given access to realms of existence that materialist science insists don't exist. You're encountering spirits, receiving teachings, and participating in a reality that's far larger than your individual life. But without training in shamanic dream work, these experiences remain largely unconscious and unintegrated. The tragedy of modern dream dismissal isn't just that we're missing out on personal insight. We're failing to recognize that we're all natural shamans, all capable of spiritual travel, all connected to a web of consciousness that extends far beyond our individual minds. Every dream is a shamanic journey. Every nightmare is a calling to heal. Every prophetic vision is a glimpse into the larger patterns that shape reality. Something unprecedented is happening to human dreaming in the digital age, and it's not good. For the first time in human history, We're raising generations who are losing the ability to dream meaningfully. The screens we stare at for hours before sleep, the digital stimulation that continues even after our eyes close, the artificial light that disrupts our natural sleep cycles, all of it is interfering with the delicate neurochemistry required for deep dreaming. But the problem runs deeper than sleep hygiene. We're creating a culture that's actively hostile to the kind of consciousness that dreams require. Dreams emerge from silence, from boredom, from the mind's natural tendency to wander and wonder. But digital culture has declared war on silence. Every moment is filled with stimulation. Every quiet second is interrupted by notifications. Every space for reflection is colonized by content. The result? Many young people report rarely dreaming at all, or having dreams that are shallow, repetitive, and heavily influenced by digital media. Instead of receiving visions from the depths of the unconscious, they are processing endless streams of digital information. Instead of meeting archetypal figures and receiving spiritual guidance, they're dreaming about video games, social media interactions, and streaming content. This isn't just a loss of personal meaning, it's a collective spiritual catastrophe. Dreams have always been humanity's primary connection to the larger intelligence that governs existence. They're how we receive guidance from sources beyond rational thinking, how we process the deeper patterns of our lives, how we stay connected to the sacred dimensions of existence. When dreams become shallow or disappear entirely, humans become spiritually malnourished. We lose access to the wisdom traditions that have guided our species for millennia. We become cut off from the collective unconscious, from ancestral guidance, from the prophetic intelligence that helps us navigate uncertain futures. The digital hijacking of consciousness is also disrupting the natural rhythm of mental processing that dreams provide. Dreams are how the mind sorts through experiences, integrates learning, and makes meaning from chaos. When this process is interrupted by constant digital stimulation, the mind becomes increasingly fragmented, anxious, and unable to process experience in meaningful ways. Sleep researchers are documenting alarming changes in dream patterns among heavy technology users. REM sleep is becoming shorter and less intense. Dream recall is dramatically decreasing. The symbolic, metaphorical thinking that dreams promote is being replaced by literal, linear processing that mirrors digital information consumption. But perhaps most concerning is how digital culture is changing the content of dreams themselves. Traditional dreams were filled with nature imagery, archetypal figures, and symbolic narratives that connected dreamers to larger meanings. Modern dreams are increasingly populated by screens, digital interfaces, and virtual experiences that offer little spiritual nourishment. The ancient Greeks understood that dreams required protection from the pollution of daily life. This is why dream temples were built in natural settings, away from the noise and stimulation of cities. Dreamers would undergo purification rituals to cleanse their consciousness before sleep, ensuring that their dreams would be clear communications from divine sources rather than polluted reflections of mundane concerns. We've created the opposite environment. Our bedrooms are filled with screens. Our pre-sleep hours are dominated by digital stimulation, and our minds are so cluttered with information that there's no space for the deeper intelligence of dreams to emerge. But the digital age isn't just killing individual dreams. It's disrupting the collective dreaming that has always connected human communities. In traditional cultures, dreams were shared, discussed, and integrated into community decision-making. Tribal elders would meet to discuss significant dreams, and major decisions would be influenced by the collective wisdom that emerged through community dream sharing. Social media creates the illusion of community dream sharing, but it's actually the opposite. People post about their dreams seeking likes and comments, but there's no real interpretation, no integration, no application of dream wisdom to collective challenges. The ancient practice of community dream work has been replaced by digital performance that makes dreams into content rather than revelation. The attention economy that drives digital platforms is fundamentally incompatible with dream consciousness. Dreams require sustained attention, patient reflection, and willingness to sit with mystery and ambiguity. Digital platforms reward rapid consumption, immediate reaction, and constant stimulation. These are opposite modes of consciousness. Recovery of meaningful dream life in the digital age requires intentional resistance to the cultural forces that fragment consciousness. It means creating digital Sabbaths, protecting sleep environments from screens, and rediscovering practices that cultivate the kind of deep attention that dreams require. But more than individual practice, it requires cultural recognition that dreams are not luxuries or entertainment. They're essential functions of human consciousness that connect us to sources of wisdom that rational thinking cannot access. A culture that loses its dreams loses its soul. What if dreams aren't just random experiences, but actual experiments in consciousness? What if every night your mind is conducting sophisticated research into the nature of reality, testing possibilities, exploring alternate scenarios, and gathering data about how consciousness itself functions? This isn't metaphorical speculation. Modern neuroscience is discovering that REM sleep serves as a kind of laboratory where the brain runs simulations, processes information in novel ways, and makes connections that aren't possible during waking consciousness. Dreams might be the mind's natural research and development department, but traditional cultures always understood this. They recognized that dreams were spaces where the usual rules of reality were suspended, allowing consciousness to explore possibilities that don't exist in ordinary waking life. In dreams, you can fly, travel through time, communicate with the dead, transform into animals, or experience realities that would be impossible in physical form. These aren't just fantasies. They're experiments in what consciousness can do when it's not limited by physical constraints. Dreams reveal the full range of conscious experience, showing us capabilities that we rarely access in waking life, but that might represent our true potential. Consider the phenomenon of lucid dreaming, where the dreamer becomes aware that they're dreaming while still remaining in the dream state. In lucid dreams, consciousness can consciously direct the dream experience, changing the narrative, transforming the environment, or engaging with dream characters in deliberate ways. Research on lucid dreaming reveals extraordinary possibilities. Lucid dreamers can practice physical skills in dreams and show measurable improvement in waking life. They can solve complex problems by accessing creative resources that aren't available to ordinary consciousness. They can engage in healing visualizations that produce real physical benefits. Some lucid dreamers report being able to communicate with other lucid dreamers within shared dream spaces. While mainstream science remains skeptical of such claims, the reports are consistent enough across cultures and individuals to suggest something more than coincidence or wishful thinking. Tibetan dream yoga practitioners claim even more extraordinary abilities. Advanced practitioners report being able to maintain continuous consciousness through all phases of sleep, dream, and waking. They describe dreams as opportunities for spiritual practice that are actually more effective than waking meditation because the mind is less constrained by physical limitations. In these traditions, dreams become training grounds for developing consciousness abilities that carry over into waking life. The practitioner learns to transform fear in dreams and becomes more courageous in daily life. They practice compassion with dream enemies and develop greater patience with difficult people. They explore the nature of reality itself and develop wisdom about the illusory nature of all experience. But dreams as consciousness laboratory extends beyond individual development. Some researchers suggest that dreams might serve as a collective problem-solving mechanism for the human species. The creativity that emerges in dreams, the novel connections that are made between previously unrelated concepts, the breakthrough insights that appear in dream form, all of this might represent consciousness evolving itself through the laboratory of sleep. The famous discoveries that came through dreams, Kekulé's benzene ring, Tesla's alternating current, Mendeleev's periodic table, weren't just individual breakthroughs. They were developments in human understanding that benefited the entire species. The individual dreamers were receiving insights that advanced collective knowledge. This suggests that dreams might function as a kind of collective intelligence network, allowing individual minds to tap into solutions and innovations that serve the larger evolutionary development of human consciousness. When you dream, you might be participating in species-wide research and development. Indigenous cultures have traditions that support this understanding. The dream time of Aboriginal Australians is conceived as a realm where individual and collective consciousness meet, where personal dreams contribute to tribal wisdom, and where the entire community participates in an ongoing exploration of reality's deeper patterns. Similarly, many Native American traditions speak of the dream realm as a place where tribal consciousness gathers to receive guidance, solve problems, and prepare for future challenges. Individual dreams are shared with the community not just for personal healing, but as contributions to collective wisdom. Modern dream research is beginning to document phenomena that support these traditional understandings. Studies of mutual dreaming, where people report sharing similar dream experiences, suggest that consciousness might be less individualized than we typically assume. The boundaries between minds might be more permeable than waking consciousness recognizes. But if dreams function as consciousness laboratories, then our collective dismissal of dreams represents a massive loss of research data. Every night, millions of minds are conducting experiments in consciousness, exploring possibilities, and generating innovations that could benefit all of humanity. But we're discarding the results as meaningless brain static. Recovery of dream wisdom isn't just about individual insight. It's about participating more consciously in humanity's ongoing research into the nature of consciousness itself. Every dream remembered, interpreted, and integrated contributes to our collective understanding of what consciousness can do and how reality actually functions. Sleep isn't the opposite of spiritual practice. It is spiritual practice. Every night, consciousness withdraws from the external world, turns inward, and explores realms that are invisible to ordinary perception. In many ways, sleep is the most natural meditation there is, and dreams are the visions that arise from this spontaneous contemplative state. Traditional meditation practices often try to achieve states that occur naturally during sleep and dreaming. The withdrawal from sensory input, the dissolution of ego boundaries, the access to symbolic and intuitive knowledge, the experience of consciousness without content, all of these meditative goals happen automatically when we sleep deeply and dream vividly. In Vedantic philosophy, sleep is considered one of the four fundamental states of consciousness, alongside waking, dreaming, and the witness consciousness that observes all three. But sleep isn't seen as unconsciousness. It's seen as pure consciousness temporarily freed from the limitations of individual identity and sensory perception. Deep sleep, according to this understanding, is actually the most profound spiritual state available to human beings. In deep sleep, the ego temporarily dissolves, the constant chatter of thoughts ceases, and consciousness rests in its pure, undifferentiated nature. This is why we wake feeling refreshed and renewed. We've spent hours bathing in the source of all awareness, but most people experience sleep unconsciously. They lose awareness when they fall asleep and regain it only when they wake up, missing the profound spiritual experience that happens in between. Traditional contemplative practices include techniques for maintaining some degree of awareness through all phases of sleep. Tibetan dream yoga is perhaps the most sophisticated system for treating sleep as meditation. Practitioners learn to recognize the moment they fall asleep, maintain awareness during dreams, and even preserve consciousness during deep sleep. The goal isn't just lucid dreaming, but continuous awareness that never breaks, regardless of whether the body is awake or asleep. Advanced practitioners report that maintaining awareness through sleep reveals the dreamlike nature of all experience. If you can remain conscious while the mind creates entire realities in dreams, complete with convincing sensory experiences, emotional responses, and logical narratives, then you begin to question the solidity of waking experience as well. This practice leads to what Buddhists call the recognition of emptiness, the understanding that all experience, whether dreaming or waking, is a construction of consciousness rather than an encounter with fixed reality. Sleep becomes a laboratory for investigating the nature of mind itself, but you don't need to be an advanced meditator to use sleep as spiritual practice. Simply paying attention to the transition between waking and sleeping can become a form of meditation. Most people lose consciousness at the moment of falling asleep, but with practice you can learn to observe this transition with awareness. Similarly, the moment of waking offers profound opportunities for contemplative practice. Instead of immediately jumping into daily activities, you can spend time observing the shift from dream consciousness to waking consciousness, noticing how the mind reconstructs its sense of individual identity and physical reality. The content of dreams themselves can become objects of meditation. Instead of dismissing dreams as meaningless, you can approach them as koans, paradoxical spiritual puzzles that reveal deeper truths about the nature of mind and reality. Dreams often present impossible scenarios that force consciousness to grapple with contradictions and paradoxes. Islamic tradition includes practices for spiritual development through sleep and dreaming. The Prophet Muhammad reportedly said that good dreams are one of the 46 parts of prophecy, and Islamic spirituality includes techniques for purifying consciousness before sleep to receive divine guidance through dreams. Sufi practices include forms of meditation that bridge waking and sleeping consciousness. Practitioners learn to maintain awareness of divine presence through all states of consciousness, treating sleep not as a break from spiritual practice, but as an opportunity for deeper communion with the divine. Hindu tradition speaks of yoga nidra, the yoga of sleep, where practitioners learn to access the profound rest and renewal of deep sleep while maintaining conscious awareness. This practice is said to be more restorative than ordinary sleep, because it combines the benefits of rest with the awareness that prevents consciousness from becoming dull or unconscious. But perhaps the most profound aspect of treating sleep as meditation is recognizing that consciousness itself never sleeps. What we call sleep is actually a shift in the content of consciousness, not its absence. Even in the deepest sleep, pure awareness continues. We're just not identified with any particular thoughts, sensations, or experiences. This recognition can transform your entire relationship with sleep. Instead of seeing it as 8 hours of unconsciousness, you can approach it as 8 hours of pure consciousness, time spent resting in the source of all awareness, receiving visions and guidance from deeper levels of mind, and participating in the natural meditation that consciousness provides every night. We're living through what could be called a shamanic crisis. All around the world, people are experiencing spontaneous spiritual awakenings, prophetic dreams, encounters with non-ordinary realities, and visions that don't fit into materialist frameworks. But instead of being recognized as spiritual emergencies that require skilled guidance, these experiences are pathologized, medicated, or dismissed as mental illness. Dreams play a central role in this crisis. Many of the people who end up in psychiatric hospitals report that their problems began with disturbing or overwhelming dream experiences. They might have received visions that felt more real than ordinary life, encountered spiritual beings who continued to communicate after waking, or experienced prophetic dreams that scared them with their accuracy. In traditional cultures, such experiences would be recognized as shamanic calling, invitations to develop spiritual gifts that could serve the community. The individual would be guided by experienced shamans or spiritual teachers who understood how to navigate non-ordinary realities safely and productively. But modern culture has no framework for understanding these experiences as anything other than psychological pathology. The psychiatrist who encounters someone reporting prophetic dreams, visitations from deceased relatives, or encounters with spiritual entities has been trained to see these as symptoms of mental illness rather than potential spiritual gifts. This creates a tragic situation where individuals who might become healers, visionaries, or spiritual teachers instead become chronic psychiatric patients. Their natural spiritual abilities are suppressed with medications, and their potential contributions to collective wisdom are lost. The crisis is particularly acute for young people, who are naturally more open to non-ordinary experiences. Children and teenagers who report vivid dreams, psychic experiences, or spiritual visions often find themselves labeled as troubled, delusional, or in need of therapy. Their natural spiritual development gets pathologized before it can mature into genuine gifts. Dr. Stanislav Grof, who spent decades researching non-ordinary states of consciousness, coined the term spiritual emergency to describe these experiences. He argued that what psychiatry labels as psychotic breaks are often actually spiritual breakthroughs that require guidance rather than medication. Sure, In his research, Groff found that people experiencing spiritual emergencies often report the same types of experiences that shamans describe during their initiatory crises: encounters with death and rebirth, visions of cosmic destruction and renewal, communication with non-physical beings, and access to information about healing and spiritual development. The difference between spiritual emergency and mental illness, according to Groff, lies not in the content of the experiences, but in how they're supported and integrated. With proper guidance, spiritual emergencies can lead to expanded consciousness, healing abilities, and profound spiritual development. Without guidance, they can become chronic psychological problems. Dreams often provide the first indication that someone is entering a spiritual emergency. The dreams become more vivid, more symbolic, and more emotionally intense. They might feature apocalyptic imagery, encounters with divine or demonic beings, or visions of personal death and rebirth. These dreams aren't random. They're the psyche's attempt to process a profound transformation of consciousness. Traditional shamanic cultures had detailed protocols for supporting individuals through these transformative crises. The community would recognize the signs, provide protection and guidance, and help the individual integrate their visions into practical service for the tribe. But modern culture not only lacks these protocols, it actively works against them. The medical model treats all unusual experiences as pathological. The materialist worldview dismisses spiritual visions as delusions, and the social pressure to appear normal forces people to hide their experiences rather than seek appropriate guidance. The result is a massive waste of human potential. Many of the people who could become our healers, visionaries, and spiritual teachers are instead medicated into numbness or isolated in psychiatric institutions. Their dreams and visions, which could provide guidance for our collective challenges, are dismissed as symptoms rather than communications. Recovery from this shamanic crisis requires cultural change that recognizes spiritual emergency as a natural part of human development. We need training programs for therapists who can distinguish between spiritual emergence and mental illness. We need support communities for people undergoing spiritual transformation. We need integration of traditional shamanic wisdom with modern psychological understanding. Most importantly, we need to reclaim dream work as a central spiritual practice. Dreams are often the first indication that someone is experiencing a spiritual opening, and proper dream work can help distinguish between psychological crisis and spiritual emergence. The shamanic crisis of modernity isn't just about individual suffering, it's about our collective loss of spiritual guidance. When we pathologize the very people who could help us navigate our current global challenges through spiritual wisdom, we cut ourselves off from sources of guidance that we desperately need. What if the current state of the world, the environmental crisis, social upheaval, technological disruption, and spiritual confusion is actually a massive collective dream that humanity is dreaming together? What if our species is going through a kind of shamanic initiation on a global scale, and the chaos we're experiencing is the dreamlike nature of transformation? This isn't just poetic metaphor. Many of the characteristics of our current historical moment mirror the dynamics of dreams. Reality seems unstable and constantly shifting. Impossible things happen regularly. Narratives change without explanation, and the usual rules of cause and effect seem suspended. Consider how quickly and dramatically reality has shifted in recent decades. Technologies that seemed like science fiction suddenly become ubiquitous. Social structures that seem permanent dissolve overnight. Environmental changes that were supposed to take centuries happen in years. The pace and nature of change resembles dream time more than historical time. Indigenous prophecies from around the world speak of this era as a time of great dreaming, a period when the boundaries between spiritual and material realities would become thin, when ancient wisdom would resurface, and when humanity would be forced to choose between destruction and transformation. The Hopi prophecy speaks of a time when humanity would face a choice between the technological path that leads to destruction and the spiritual path that leads to harmony. They describe this as a time when the great purification would occur, a collective awakening that would separate those ready for spiritual evolution from those who remain trapped in material consciousness. The Mayan calendar's end date of 2012 was interpreted by many as marking the transition from one age of consciousness to another, from the age of separation and materialism to an age of unity and spiritual awareness. Whether or not you believe in such prophecies, it's undeniable that something profound is shifting in human consciousness. Dreams often precede major life transitions, and the same might be true for species-wide transitions. The collective dreams that people are reporting, visions of environmental catastrophe, spiritual awakening, technological transformation, and social upheaval, might be previews of the changes that humanity is approaching. Carl Jung observed this phenomenon during World War I, when he and many of his patients began having apocalyptic dreams months before the war began. He realized that individual dreams can sometimes reflect collective psychological states, picking up on tensions and changes that haven't yet manifested in external events. Social media has created something unprecedented in human history, a global nervous system where collective psychological states can be shared and amplified instantly. The dreams, visions, and spiritual experiences that once remained private are now being shared across cultures and continents, creating a kind of collective dreaming process. But this collective dream isn't just happening during sleep. The dreamlike quality of contemporary reality, where information moves faster than understanding, where images become more powerful than facts, where narratives shift constantly, suggests that we might be living in a collective dream state even while awake. Traditional cultures understood that entire communities could enter dreamlike states during times of crisis or transformation. These periods were often seen as sacred times, when the collective soul was undergoing necessary changes, even if those changes appeared chaotic or destructive from ordinary perspectives. The shamanic understanding of dreams includes the recognition that difficult or frightening dreams often precede positive transformations. The nightmare that terrifies you might be showing you old patterns that need to die so new ones can be born. The same might be true for humanity's collective nightmare. Environmental destruction, social inequality, technological disruption, and spiritual crisis might all be symptoms of a dying worldview, the death throes of materialism and separation that must occur before a more integrated and conscious way of living can emerge. From this perspective, the people who are having prophetic dreams, spiritual visions, and encounters with non-ordinary realities aren't experiencing individual psychological problems. They're receiving information about humanity's collective transformation. They're the dreamers of the species, picking up on the deeper patterns of change that are emerging. But, just like individual dreams, collective dreams require interpretation and integration. The visions and experiences that people are having need to be shared, discussed, and woven into new narratives that can guide us through the transformation we're experiencing. This is why dream work is becoming crucial, not just for individual healing, but for collective healing. As more people learn to work with their dreams consciously, we create a network of conscious dreamers who can help interpret the collective visions that our species is receiving. The ancient practice of community dream sharing takes on new urgency when the entire species is going through a shamanic initiation. We need councils of dreamers, gatherings where visions can be shared and integrated, practices that help us distinguish between personal and collective dream material. Because if we're all having the same dream, then we all have responsibility for how that dream unfolds. The collective vision of our species' future isn't predetermined. It's being dreamed into existence by all of us together, every night and every day. The most dangerous moment in any transformative dream isn't the vision itself. It's the forgetting that follows. You can receive the most profound spiritual revelation, encounter the deepest wisdom, experience the most healing insight. But if you don't remember and integrate what you've received, it vanishes like morning mist. This is the challenge facing anyone who takes dream work seriously. How do you bridge the gap between the profound experiences of sleep and the practical demands of waking life? How do you honor the wisdom received in dreams without becoming ungrounded in daily reality? Integration is where most people fail with dream work. They treat dreams like entertainment, interesting experiences to remember and perhaps share, but not communications that require response and action. They wake up inspired by a powerful dream and then immediately forget it in the rush of daily activities. But traditional cultures understood that dreams aren't just experiences, they're assignments. When you receive a vision, you're being tasked with something. When an ancestor appears in your dreams, they're not just visiting, they're requesting action. When you dream of healing, you're being called to participate in that healing process. The Aboriginal concept of the dream time includes this understanding completely. The dream time isn't just a mythological realm, it's a source of ongoing guidance and obligation. When you dream of a sacred site, you might be called to visit it. When you dream of a ceremony, you might need to learn and perform it. When you dream of a healing plant, you might need to find and use it. Integration requires what traditional cultures called dream incubation, the practice of setting clear intentions before sleep, and then following through on whatever guidance is received. You don't just dream passively, you dream purposefully, asking specific questions and committing to act on whatever answers you receive. But integration also requires discernment. Not every dream is a divine communication requiring immediate action. Some dreams are psychological processing, some are random neural firing, some are spiritual communications. Learning to distinguish between these different types of dreams is a crucial skill that takes time and experience to develop. Carl Jung spent decades developing methods for dream integration that honor both the symbolic content of dreams and the practical requirements of daily life. He emphasized the importance of active imagination, continuing the dialogue with dream figures while awake, allowing the dream narrative to unfold further, and finding ways to embody dream insights in waking life. His approach included detailed dream journaling, artistic expression of dream imagery, and careful analysis of recurring patterns and symbols. But most importantly, he insisted that dream work must lead to practical changes in how you live. If your dreams don't transform your actual behavior, relationships, and choices, then you're not really working with them, you're just collecting them. Integration also requires community. Traditional cultures never expected individuals to integrate powerful dreams alone. There were always elders, shamans, or spiritual teachers available to help interpret dreams and guide the integration process. Dream sharing was a community practice that ensured visions were received and acted upon appropriately. Modern dream work often happens in isolation, which makes integration much more difficult. Without community support and guidance, people often feel overwhelmed by powerful dreams or uncertain about how to respond to them. They might receive profound guidance but lack the support system needed to act on it. This is why dream circles, spiritual communities, and therapeutic relationships become crucial for serious dream work. You need witnesses to your dreams, people who can help you interpret their meaning and support you in acting on their guidance. But perhaps the most important aspect of integration is recognizing that dreams don't just provide information, they provide energy. The emotions you feel in dreams, the imagery that appears, the narratives that unfold, all of this contains life force that can be channeled into creative projects, healing work, and spiritual development. The energy of flying dreams can fuel ambitious projects. The power of shadow dreams can provide the strength needed for difficult confrontations. The love experienced in dreams of deceased relatives can heal grief and restore faith. But this energy only becomes available when you learn to receive it consciously and channel it purposefully. Integration is ultimately about becoming a bridge between worlds, learning to live simultaneously in the practical realm of daily life and the visionary realm of dreams. This isn't about choosing one over the other, but about weaving them together into a life that's both grounded and inspired, both practical and visionary. The people who master this integration become what traditional cultures called bridge people, individuals who can access non-ordinary realities while remaining functional in ordinary reality. They become healers, teachers, artists, and leaders who draw their wisdom from dream realms while serving in the waking world. But integration isn't just an individual practice, it's a collective necessity. As more people begin having powerful dreams and spiritual experiences, we need cultural structures that support integration of these experiences into community life. We need new forms of leadership that can receive visionary guidance and translate it into practical action. Because the dreams we're receiving aren't just personal communications, they're guidance for navigating the collective challenges facing humanity. The visions of environmental healing, social transformation, and spiritual awakening that people are reporting in dreams contain practical information about how to create the changes our world desperately needs. But those changes will only manifest if we learn to integrate dream wisdom into collective action. This requires communities of practice, networks of conscious dreamers, and new forms of leadership that can bridge visionary experience with practical application. We're living through the return of the sacred, and dreams are leading the way. After centuries of materialist reduction that treated consciousness as brain activity, matter as dead substance, and spiritual experience as delusion, something profound is shifting. The sacred is reasserting itself, demanding recognition, refusing to remain hidden behind scientific explanations and rationalist dismissals. Dreams are at the forefront of this return because they can't be fully explained by materialist science. Yes, we can measure brainwaves during REM sleep. We can identify which neurotransmitters are involved in dream states. We can map which brain regions are active during different phases of sleep. But none of this explains the content, meaning, or transformative power of dreams themselves. The mystery remains. How does the brain generate experiences of flying through cosmic space, conversing with deceased relatives, receiving information about future events, or encountering spiritual beings with consistent teachings across cultures and centuries? The materialist explanation that all of this is just random neural firing feels increasingly inadequate as our understanding of consciousness deepens. Quantum physics has begun revealing that consciousness and matter interact in ways that don't fit classical scientific models. The observer effect, quantum entanglement, and non-local correlations suggest that consciousness isn't produced by matter, but might be fundamental to reality itself. This opens space for understanding dreams not as brain products, but as consciousness accessing information, fields that transcend individual minds. The return of the sacred doesn't mean abandoning scientific method. It means recognizing the limitations of materialist assumptions and opening to larger possibilities. It means acknowledging that consciousness might be more fundamental than matter, that information might exist in forms that transcend physical brains, and that subjective experience might provide valid knowledge about reality's deeper structures. Dreams are becoming doorways for this recognition because they consistently provide information that materialist frameworks can't explain. Prophetic dreams that come true, healing dreams that produce physical changes, shared dreams between people who have no physical contact, dreams that provide solutions to problems the conscious mind couldn't solve. But the return of the sacred through dreams isn't happening in churches or temples. It's happening in bedrooms, therapy offices, and online forums where people share experiences that don't fit conventional worldviews. It's a grassroots spiritual renaissance led by direct experience rather than institutional authority. Social media has created an unprecedented opportunity for people to discover that their unusual dream experiences aren't isolated anomalies, but part of larger patterns. Someone posts about a prophetic dream and discovers that hundreds of others have had similar experiences. Another person shares a visitation dream from a deceased relative and finds community with others who've received such communications. This collective sharing is creating a new form of empirical spirituality, where spiritual truths are validated not by ancient texts or religious authorities, but by contemporary experience across diverse populations. Dreams are providing a democratic form of revelation, where anyone can receive profound spiritual communications regardless of their religious background or institutional affiliation. The return of the sacred through dreams is also challenging professional boundaries. Therapists are finding that their clients' dreams contain spiritual content that can't be reduced to psychological dynamics. Medical doctors are encountering patients whose dreams provide diagnostic information that medical testing missed. Scientists are discovering that breakthrough insights often come through dreams that access information beyond their conscious knowledge. This creates a need for new forms of professional training that can honor both scientific rigor and spiritual experience. We need therapists who understand dreams as spiritual communications, doctors who can recognize the healing potential of visionary experiences, and scientists who can investigate consciousness phenomena without reducing them to mere brain activity. Educational systems are beginning to recognize this need. Medical schools are introducing courses on the role of spirituality in healing. Psychology programs are including training in transpersonal approaches that honor spiritual experience. Even business schools are teaching about the role of intuition and creativity in leadership and innovation. But perhaps the most significant aspect of the sacred's return through dreams is its democratizing effect. In traditional religious systems, access to sacred experience was often mediated by priests, shamans, or other spiritual authorities. Dreams provide direct access to sacred experience that requires no intermediary, no institution, and no special qualifications beyond the willingness to pay attention. This doesn't diminish the value of spiritual guidance and community support. Experienced dream workers and spiritual teachers remain invaluable resources for interpretation and integration. But it does mean that the primary revelation comes through direct experience rather than transmitted authority. The return of the sacred through dreams is also revealing the inadequacy of existing religious frameworks for understanding contemporary spiritual experience. Many people are having profound spiritual experiences in dreams that don't fit the theology or cosmology of their inherited religious traditions. They're encountering spiritual beings, receiving teachings, and accessing wisdom that transcends particular cultural or religious boundaries. This is creating a new form of spirituality that's simultaneously ancient and contemporary, rooted in direct experience like shamanic traditions, but informed by contemporary psychological and scientific understanding. It's a spirituality that honors the reality of spiritual dimensions while remaining grounded in practical application. Every night, millions of people around the world are receiving visions of possible futures. Some of these dreams show environmental catastrophe and social collapse. Others reveal technological breakthroughs and spiritual awakening. Still others depict scenarios that blend destruction and renewal, ending and beginning, death and rebirth. These aren't just individual dreams. They are collective previews of potential timelines that humanity is approaching. The future isn't predetermined, but exists in potential form, and consciousness can access these potentials through dreams and other non-ordinary states of awareness. This understanding transforms the meaning of prophetic dreams from fatalistic predictions to participatory previews. When you dream of a possible future, you're not seeing what must happen, but what could happen based on current trajectories. These dreams become invitations to participate consciously in creating the future, rather than passively experiencing whatever unfolds. Indigenous prophecies from around the world speak of this time as a crucial junction point, where humanity must choose between different evolutionary pathways. The Hopi speak of two paths, one technological and destructive, the other spiritual and harmonious. The Maya describe the transition between world ages. The Hindu tradition speaks of the shift from Kali Yuga, the age of darkness, to Satya Yuga, the age of truth. These prophecies aren't just ancient wisdom. They're being confirmed and updated through contemporary dreams and visions. People around the world are reporting remarkably similar dreams about environmental changes, technological developments, social transformations, and spiritual awakenings. The consistency of these collective dreams suggests that consciousness has access to information about emerging possibilities that haven't yet materialized in physical reality. The future might exist in potential form within what Jung called the collective unconscious, accessible to individual minds through dreams and other altered states. But here's the crucial insight. These future dreams aren't just previews, they're participatory. The act of dreaming about possible futures helps determine which possibilities become actual. When thousands of people dream about environmental healing, they're not just seeing a potential future, they're helping to create it by focusing collective consciousness on that possibility. This is why the content of humanity's collective dreams matters enormously. The visions we're receiving and the futures we're dreaming into existence will shape the reality that emerges. Nightmares of catastrophe might be warnings designed to prevent those outcomes. Dreams of renewal might be blueprints for creating better alternatives. The technology that's emerging from human consciousness increasingly resembles dream logic. Virtual and augmented reality create experiences that mirror dream states. Artificial intelligence processes information in ways that resemble unconscious pattern recognition. Global communication networks function like collective nervous systems that share information instantly across vast distances. These technological developments might not be accidental, but expressions of consciousness evolving toward greater integration and expanded capability. The tools we're creating externally might reflect the capacities that consciousness is developing internally through practices like dream work, meditation, and other consciousness expanding disciplines. Many scientists and inventors report that their breakthrough discoveries come through dreams or dreamlike states of inspiration. Tesla's alternating current, Einstein's theory of relativity, and countless other innovations emerge from non-rational sources that closely resemble dream consciousness. This suggests that technological evolution and consciousness evolution aren't separate processes, but aspects of a larger transformation in which humanity is developing new capacities both internally and externally. The future we're creating through technology and the future we're accessing through consciousness might be converging towards something unprecedented in human history. But this convergence also presents dangers. If we're dreaming the future into existence, then the quality of our dreams becomes crucial. Collective nightmares of destruction could manifest as destructive realities. Unconscious fears and shadow material could shape the technologies and social systems we create. This is why individual dream work becomes a form of collective service. When you heal your personal shadows through dream work, you're contributing to the healing of collective shadows. When you receive guidance through dreams and act on it consciously, you're participating in the conscious evolution of the species. The people who are doing serious dream work aren't just working on personal development, they're participating in humanity's collective initiation. They're helping to midwife the birth of a new form of consciousness that can navigate the challenges and opportunities of our time. But this requires more than individual practice. It requires communities of conscious dreamers who can share their visions, support each other's integration process, and collaborate in manifesting the positive futures that are being revealed through dreams. The ancient practice of council fires, where tribal members would gather to share dreams and visions, needs to be revived for our time. We need dream councils and communities around the world where people can share their prophetic dreams, work together to interpret their meaning, and coordinate action based on the guidance they're receiving. This isn't just spiritual practice, it's survival strategy. The challenges facing humanity, environmental crisis, social inequality, technological disruption, and existential risk require solutions that go beyond rational analysis. We need access to sources of wisdom that can perceive larger patterns and longer-term consequences than ordinary thinking can grasp. Dreams provide this access, but only if we learn to work with them collectively as well as individually. The visions being received by conscious dreamers around the world might contain the keys to navigating our current challenges and creating the more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible. We stand at a threshold. Behind us lies a world that has forgotten the language of dreams, dismissed the wisdom of the unconscious, and reduced consciousness to brain chemistry. Ahead lies the possibility of a world that remembers, a world that honors dreams as sacred communications, recognizes consciousness as fundamental reality, and uses visionary experience to guide collective decision-making. The choice is ours, but it's not just a choice for those who call themselves spiritual seekers or consciousness explorers. It's a choice for every human being who dreams, which means every human being who sleeps. Because whether you remember your dreams or not, whether you believe in their significance or dismiss them as nonsense, you're participating in the collective dreaming of humanity's future. The question is, are you participating consciously or unconsciously? Every night, as you surrender to sleep and allow consciousness to journey beyond the boundaries of ordinary perception, you're contributing to the collective vision of what humanity is becoming. Your dreams are votes in an election where the prize is the future of consciousness itself. But voting isn't enough. Democracy requires informed participation, and conscious dreaming requires preparation, practice, and integration. Just as you wouldn't vote in a political election without understanding the issues and candidates, you shouldn't participate in humanity's collective dreaming without understanding what dreams are, how they function, and what they're trying to communicate. This is the call to remember. Remember that dreams are not brain waste, but soul food. Remember that the unconscious is not a garbage dump for repressed material, but a sacred library containing the accumulated wisdom of the species. Remember that sleep is not unconsciousness, but the most natural altered state, the meditation that happens automatically every night. Remember that you are not just an individual mind trapped in an isolated skull, but a participant in a collective intelligence that transcends individual boundaries. Your dreams are not just personal experiences, but communications from the larger consciousness of which you are part. Remember that the ancestors speak through dreams, that the future can be glimpsed in visions, that healing can come through symbolic encounters, and that guidance is available to anyone who learns to listen to the language of symbols and metaphors. But remembering is not enough. The wisdom must be embodied, integrated, and applied to the challenges of living in a world that desperately needs the guidance that dreams provide. This requires courage, the courage to take your inner life seriously in a culture that only values external achievement, the courage to honor mysterious experiences in a world that demands rational explanations, the courage to act on guidance that comes from sources other than logical analysis. It requires discipline, the discipline to maintain dream journals, to practice dream recall, to work with difficult dreams rather than dismissing them, to seek guidance from others who understand the symbolic language of the unconscious. It requires community, the willingness to share your dreams with others, to support fellow dreamers in their integration process, to participate in the collective work of interpreting humanity's shared visions. And it requires service, the recognition that the gifts received through dreams are not for personal aggrandizement, but for collective healing, that the visions you receive are meant to be shared, and that the wisdom you access is needed by others. The call to remember is not a call to escape the practical demands of daily life, but to bring visionary wisdom into practical application. It's not a call to reject rational thinking, but to complement it with intuitive knowing. It's not a call to withdraw from the world, but to engage with it more consciously and creatively. The world needs dreamers who can also be builders, visionaries who can also be practical, mystics who can also be healers. It needs people who can access non-ordinary realities while remaining grounded in ordinary responsibilities. But most of all, it needs people who remember that consciousness is sacred, that dreams are communications from sacred sources, and that each night offers an opportunity to receive guidance for navigating the unprecedented challenges and opportunities of our time. The dreams are calling, the ancestors are speaking, the future is being born, and you, every time you close your eyes and surrender to sleep, are participating in the most important conversation humanity has ever had with itself. The question is not whether you dream, you do. The question is whether you listen. The question is not whether your dreams matter, they do. The question is whether you honor them. The question is not whether consciousness is more than brain activity, it is. The question is whether you align yourself with its larger intelligence. This is the call to remember, and the time for remembering is now. There are things about dreams in the mystical realms that we can't share in a public video like this. Advanced techniques for conscious dreaming, methods for navigating dangerous spiritual territories, and practices for developing prophetic abilities. We've included them in our Insights Academy newsletter, link in the description. Sign up to receive exclusive content, and for a limited time, a free copy of the Kybalion. Because in the end, this isn't just about dreams, it's about consciousness itself. Not what happens when you sleep, but who you are when you wake up. Not about the visions you receive, but what you do with the wisdom they contain. Not about the future you dream about, but the future you create. The dreams showed you what's possible. Now you decide whether to make it real. If this documentary resonated with you, let us know by commenting, "I remembered,"